Welcome to Pop Culture Roulette for all your pop culture needs. We're America's podcast. All right, everybody, welcome. I am once again without Justin and Jeremy. They're watching a Packer game, which they've deemed more important, and well, quite honestly, it probably is. But anyway, I have had a good time with Nick last week, so this week I'm going to bring in another guy from the game show, Tim. Tim,
Hey, buddy.
how's it going, Tim? Tim Sternberg
Yes, that's right. What's up, Nicholas? How are you, my
from
friend?
from We Are Family. But not only that, you've had a very interesting life. You've done a number of game shows.
I have.
Let's start with one of them. Let's go. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Okay.
You were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with the original run with Regis Philbin, the primetime lineup, not the the
Meredith
syndicated
Vieira.
with Meredith Vieira. So you were
Yeah.
on. And oddly enough, I know it wasn't the way you originally planned on filming because nobody could have. It was the last episode that aired before September 11th, which is
Yeah.
kind of a downer, but we'll not talk about that. Let's go back to the fun part. You were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. How did that happen?
Oh my goodness. Unbelievably, being a pop culture fan, I've always been a fan of game shows, watched game shows, played at home on the couch like most of us do my entire life. And when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire started becoming this pop culture juggernaut that it was, you saw John Carpenter in November of 2000 go for the $1 million. I was like, wow, or November 99, whenever that was. I was like, wow, I really want to try to get on the show. So for a number of months and months and months, I'm trying what they deemed the phone game back then. And basically what it was is at the end of every episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Regis gave out a phone number and said, call this number and play a phone game. And it was literally pop culture on the phone. And those who got it fastest to most correct would go into a pool to be called the next day to fly out to New York. It was a very quick turnaround for the show. And, I tried. I mean, I tried and I tried and I tried. It was very difficult to compete with that. And so fast forward a little bit in the summer of 2000, no, in the spring of 2001, the casting and ABC decided they were going to start auditioning people, not just doing the phone game. So they started doing alternating episodes. One episode was contestants from the phone game. The next episode was audition contestants. So I went down to Miami to my local television station. I took a test. It was pretty difficult, pop culture test. Passed the test and then went and did an audition. I flatted out, terrible audition for me. I was bummed out, etc. I knew I bombed it. And I heard that they were going to go to Savannah, Georgia, and not too far from South Florida. I hopped in a plane. My uncle was working for American Airlines at the time. He had these passes. Hopped in a plane with my wife, went to Savannah just for the day, went to the hotel where they were auditioning, took the test again, different tests, and killed it. I mean, I passed it, the audition. I felt really, really good. About a month later, I get a postcard that says, congratulations, you're in the pool for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That was like in June of 2001. And then in July of 2001, second week in July, I win a trip to the Planet of the Apes premiere. That was the original reboot that they did.
Oh, yeah.
And
The one we don't want to talk about.
Yes, exactly. It was not a good movie. But I, won a trip through my local newspaper, so I was already in New York. And that week, I get a call from the people Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We want to fly you to New York. I'm like, well, I'm gonna be in New York. So I worked it out where I extended my air, and there I was. I went to a movie premiere, saw Regis Philbin there, and the next 2 days later, I'm in the studio with him filming this episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So yeah, it was just a ride. It was unbelievably exciting.
No, you got to actually do that. I always wanted to do that show, but I never took the time to actually play the phone game or follow through on any of interview or the trying to do the audition stuff. But you just said something that reminded me of. So when we were down in Atlanta filming We Are Family, you had a chance to tell me about a number of things. You might be one of the luckiest people I've ever met, if not one of the luckiest people on the planet. How many contests, ballpark number, would you say you've won?
Ooh. I've never, see, you're a good host. I've never had anyone ask me that question. I would say in the hundreds, maybe 200 to 300 big prizes, I will say. And that's not counting like your t-shirts and your kind of your
Jeez.
your little swag stuff that you would win.
Yeah,
Um,
see,
about
it's
a
not
hundred trips.
100 trips. Good Lord. I have never won a trip or I've barely won anything. Like I struggle just to win the like a scratch off, like $5 off of that. You have won a trip to the Oscars.
Yes. They
Um,
actually did a broadcast of my wife and I as we went to the red carpet. They did a whole piece and it included first class airfare. The whole spa day thing. It was that was the year Titanic was the best picture
uh,
winner.
um,
I like to put time perspective into
okay,
things
yeah, wrong
pop
picture,
culturally.
wrong picture won that year. But anyway,
Goodwill Hunting was nominated.
yeah. So I can't tell you the amount of times I've entered to win tickets to the World Series or the All-Star Game or the Super Bowl or probably the Oscars. You've actually won them for the
Yeah.
Oscars anyway.
And the
You
Super
also
Bowl. Hmm.
and okay, so
Super
you
Bowl
won it.
33.
Which one was that one?
30, that was the one in Miami. Joe Robbie.
Oh,
Well, at the
okay.
time it was Joe Robbie Stadium. Kiss did the opening thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, so
That was Denver versus Atlanta. That was that
mm,
Super Bowl. Yeah,
oh, that
Elway's
Super
last
Bowl.
game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You also won Paul you got to have lunch with Paul Abdul.
Yes. That was through an energy drink local radio contest. Yeah, and I got to work out with her too, which was interesting.
You-
She's a cool lady.
when did you win the thing with Paul Abdul? Like was that at her height in the 90s or
No, it was
okay.
in between. So you're talking like 98, maybe that was. And so that was after her hype in the 90s and before American Idol
Oh,
like
okay.
really took off. So kind of that middle period.
All right. And one of the more interesting things that you told me that you won was you got to play basketball with Alonzo Mourning.
Yes.
Um,
I
which
tried to play basketball with the
I mean, let's just putting it mildly. I don't think you stood a chance against
No.
Alonzo Mourning. Even
As, as
even in your younger days, I'm guessing
yeah.
these
As a matter
guys.
of fact, this dude on my TikTok, when I posted that, he goes, that has to be some of the worst playing basketball skills I've ever seen. And I'm like, dude, you missed the point of the video.
Yeah, I mean, because yeah, no, that was, I mean, how you so what you've won trips all around the world then.
Yeah, Easter Island, Taiwan, Amsterdam, London, Paris, yeah, Jamaica, almost all over the Caribbean. Yeah,
Jeez.
all over the country too. Chicago, we went to see Destiny's Child and Kanye West at the House of Blues with Pepsi. I mean, it's some of the craziest stuff we we've done some really cool stuff for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Pro
why
Bowl in Hawaii, that was another big one.
I mean, listen, I won't watch the Pro Bowl, but if someone was to fly me out and give me tickets to it,
Exactly.
maybe I'd want, but like if they're like, "Oh,
Listen,
you
you want
want
to send
to."
me to Hawaii any day?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've never been to Hawaii, so if I want to go to if I want to well, they don't do the Pro Bowl in Hawaii anymore, but
No, bummer.
which
Yeah.
is I'm sure as players they're like even less interested in going to the Pro Bowl.
They've done it a couple of times in South Florida, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone to see it. I have no desire. I have gone to the All-Star game for baseball. You know, I'm a big baseball
Oh
fan.
yeah,
That's a long story.
when the last time the All-Star game was in Anaheim, my dad was like, "We're gonna go," because my dad and I are giant Angel fans,
Yeah,
and
I
it
know
was
this.
it was right after the the woman who's now my wife and I had just started dating, and we were getting pretty serious. So my dad flew me and her out to meet him and my mom out in California. They flew from DC, we flew from Milwaukee, and we spent a couple days just driving around California. We saw the All-Star game. I mean, it was a good time, but we
Went to
had to pay for it.
Disneyland.
No, we didn't. We
Oh,
drove to like Disneyland, like the outside part where
I
you
love
like
that area.
the mall area that you can get into for
Hmm.
free, but
Yep.
we didn't have time or really enough left at that point to go to Disneyland. But we had to pay for those tickets. We didn't win them, so you know we un, unlike you who probably would have just won.
Well, I did. I actually, when they all started in 2017, when it was down here in Miami, I did pay for those tickets. So I do pay for some things.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, you know, so well, back to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire a little bit. What
Okay.
what was the when you cat you because you didn't win the million,
No,
but you would
we would
you
have a different conversation.
yeah yeah. Well, not a lot of people did win the million on that show, but
No.
I mean that getting to what level you got? What level did you get to? I can't remember.
So I was on a $32,000 question, and I already had in my bank $16,000. So I had the choice of guessing right or wrong. And if I was wrong, if I was right, I would get $32,000. If I was wrong, I would have lost $15,000. So it would have been a net gain of 1,000 if I guessed. It did not make sense statistically for me if I didn't know the answer to the question or was even close. And it was a geography question. It was which one of these countries lies south of China in the South China Sea. And this is before college and whatnot. I'm still even, I'm a history major. I'm still not great with geography. It's a weak point of mine. And the answer was the Philippines of the four choices. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
wasn't
saying
upset.
not
I
saying I
was very
wouldn't have
happy.
made the same choice if I was in that shoes. Losing 15 grand over, you know,
I
yeah.
can't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't
If
going to do it.
if I knew for certain or was like,
Oh, if
you
I knew
know,
for certain, I would have
or
guessed.
if I was you know, hedging my bets, like if I was like I'm really close, but you know, maybe I would have, but you know. But
Well, if
still
you
that's
rewind that tape, right? So when I got to the 16,000, and 16,000 was who's the father of explorer Leif Erikson, I was kind of sure, but I used a 50-50, and I was kind of still sure. And I was like, I just went for it and said, Eric the Red. And, so it was a calculated guess, but once I got up to that level, it was like, no way.
yeah, that's a lot to walk away from, you know.
Definitely.
Man, I just every time we talk about how many contests you've won, you surprise me with another one.
I won four
Uh,
cars too.
I could use a car right now, but
I could too. My car right now has 92,000
so
miles.
when you win one of these cars, do you actually get the car, or do they let you just like you got to go to like a dealership, or they just like show up at your house with a car, or
So there are four different scenarios in which I won a car. The first one I did a key turn at the Daytona 500. So I won a trip to the Daytona 500, or I'm on the infield, and to turn the key. And that was a tragic day. That was actually the day that Dale Earnhardt passed
oh
away. Yeah, that was 2001's Daytona 500. And oh, yeah. Talk about going from a high to a low. That year, with Millionaire and what happened, it was a lot. But I was on the infield, and I ended up getting a cash alternative for that. They gave me $20,000. So it was a hard tax year because that was the same year as Millionaire.
uh,
Um, and then I won a car through Winn-Dixie's South Florida supermarket, Southern supermarket chain, a Pontiac Grand Prix, and they actually had the car, so I took possession of the car, and I drove that one for a while. That was my car. I won a Ford Escape, which I ended up selling to a friend of mine for cash, and then the last car I won was a stick shift, and I don't drive stick. I need to learn eventually, but it was a GMC Sierra pickup truck, and I ended up selling that to CarMax. But yeah, so yeah, I got money. I mean, cashed out. They weren't all the same year. It's within 4 years of each other. Those cars. Two of the cars were close. The Aztec and the Ford Escape were pretty close to each other.
man, I just like I said, I mean, I've played the lottery where, like, like for like the Mega Millions or the Powerball, when I've not even matched a number, which I feel is harder to do. Like, I'll buy like four or five tickets and
Yeah,
not match a number, let alone, and here you are winning four cars.
it's very hard. It's harder to win the lottery for sure. You know what
Well,
it
yeah,
is?
obviously, but yeah.
And our friend Charlie will agree with this. It's all about statistics. So I look at statistics. So many of the contests I've won have been only open to the residents of my state. And so it's all about, making, the most out of the lower pool of people that you're playing against. And that's kind of
Okay.
how I hedge my bets with sweepstakes. That's kind of how I won them.
So
Now I'm
there's a,
giving out my secrets.
oh, all right. So this one secret is look at to see who can actually enter
Where's the
said kind.
eligibility in the
Where
rules? Yes.
okay, all right. There's because I was about to ask you there's got to be some sort of secret to it because I mean it's not like I haven't entered contest before. Like I mean the closest I've ever come to actually like hearing back from anything that I've done was We Are Family. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a great experience. I mean,
So
I viewed that as like a win, just well, we can talk about that after, but
yeah,
yeah.
but but before you were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, if I've got the timeline right, you were on Wheel of Fortune.
After.
Oh, okay, it was after.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
that was
okay.
Millionaire was the first game show I was on.
Oh, okay. All right.
Technically, I did some game show network stuff, like through the phone. Like they used to have a phone game, and I've won like furniture and stuff like that. I did a Hollywood Squares Secret Square sweepstakes where I won $17,000 worth of prizes. But officially on camera as a contestant, Wheel of Fortune was number two.
Okay, all right. Pat Sajak is cool in person as he seems.
Absolutely, absolutely, really cool guy, nice guy. Vanna White came into the holding room at the beginning of the day. She was in her street clothes. She turns to us and she says, "You guys got this." And I was like, "Oh, this nice lady is saying we got it," and I didn't recognize her because she was in her street clothes. And someone says, "Oh my God, that's Vanna White," and we all like, "Oh," So yeah, she's so sweet. She really is the person that she is on TV. She was like that with us contestants too.
Well,
She's
that's good. It's
amazing.
always good to hear that because you hear stories about other particular individuals and you're just like, oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
You know.
I've never had a bad game show experience ever.
You were also on One versus 100.
I was. That
Okay.
was an interesting. It wasn't a bad experience. It was an interesting experience.
Now, if memory serves with One versus 100, there was the one contestant and then there was the pool of 100 people,
The mob.
the
We
mob.
were the mob.
Okay.
Yes.
And then it like as the round went on, the mob got smaller and smaller and smaller. How far did you make it as the mob?
Not far.
Okay.
And so, unlike, well, I can say this for one versus 100, you went in, it was a big cattle call, lots and lots of people, because what happened was once you were eliminated from the mob, bye bye, you're gone. That's it. And most people only were on one episode, and it was like, that's it. And so I was only on, it was number 56. It was a blip that we all had numbers in front of us. We weren't even identified unless Bob Saget talked to us. And that was it. We were gone. So I flew to LA, and I was basically a one, two, three, boom.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that being a little bit more of a different experience.
But it was fun. It's still experience.
Because One versus 100 was a show that I watched, but not as religiously as other shows, or definitely not as much as Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Hence why it didn't stay on the air that long.
But One versus 100 after its afterlife was much more interesting because it moved from being, and I think it was a much better version of One versus 100 when it moved to
GSN.
Xbox Live.
Oh, Xbox Live. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it moved to Xbox Live, and then so like you could get into the mob like countless numbers of times over and over again, and occasionally you'd enter in the lobby, and then like you'd be in the mob or you'd be the one or like you just get to be, and it was just always interactive. And I guess technically I did win some Xbox points here or there,
There you
but
go.
like so I guess I did win something once, but it was something like I would actually like it when it was on, and it was unfortunately it wasn't on very long, but I would go out of my way to like try to schedule my evenings around being home to play 1 versus 100 on the Xbox because it was a lot of fun, and you actually got to like interact with it and be involved. Where I think the concept for TV is just it was too convoluted and just whatever, that it didn't it I think it
And it
had
felt that way in person too,
yeah.
even before it aired.
So I think when it moved, and unfortunately Xbox didn't keep it going for very long, but I think it did a much better job in that world. I think it would be even successful now if Xbox was to bring it back, or some sort of streaming,
And
service where
to your point, I think we're missing that, right? So we're in the streaming age right now with TikTok and whatnot. We're missing that interactivity that Xbox. I think manufacturers should hear this. I think to have an engaging, I mean, it's great to play Madden and sports on these platforms, but to have like a trivia engaging experience would be so good for these providers that are streamers and whatnot. And that's kind of why I'm starting to do what I'm doing, like
yeah, I mean it would, having I mean, we live in a world where being able to do stuff with the game show past just what they currently do. And I'm not saying what they're currently doing is bad or wrong. I just think that
it's
we
not.
we
Yeah.
live in a world where I'm surprised that a streamer hasn't picked up the idea of doing something where they don't have to spend any money flying 115 people down to a city and putting them up in a hotel for 2.5 weeks. You could do a lot with contestants at home.
So I'm doing this TikTok show that I'm doing in trivia chat every other night, and I think one of the goals for me to doing that is to kind of enlighten. And there's other trivia creators on TikTok now. There's other great creators. I think to raise awareness of that, so that maybe the platform itself, like TikTok or any other like Instagram or whatnot, that has a live element to it will do something with that. And it's not just, I mean, I love, obviously we were participants in a game show in the studio, which is awesome and still great. But to have an interactive play along element or something like that with that is, I think, a missed opportunity right now that could
Yeah.
really make money.
And I mean, like, Peacock or Disney or some of the other, they've found things that work. And like Disney's really kind of going and trying some of like the live events, and like they showed the Elton John concert, and they've done some
Green
other stuff.
Day,
Yeah, but
Amazon Day, Green Day.
yeah, and yeah, I couldn't imagine Disney trying to do Green Day.
Yeah, true.
Risky enough doing Elton John, but
True.
but I think there are opportunities, and I think as since we're still in the nascent days of streaming, like I know it's been around for a couple of years now, but I think that streamers and networks or studios are still trying to figure it out because I mean we went from having Netflix and Hulu to everybody has to have their own, and now we're
Hmm.
seeing them kind of whittle themselves back down. You know,
Yeah.
Paramount's buying some, Peacock's buying some, Max is buying some. Like Discovery Plus doesn't. I don't even know if it exists anymore because it's now all under the Max umbrella, and it's
I mean,
easier.
how many subscriptions? I mean, I
I
don't.
have,
How do you
I
keep
have,
track of your subscriptions? Because it's
I have
crazy.
way too many, and I barely
Netflix
remember.
and Peacock and all that.
Like it's and there'll be times when Jess and I will be sitting around going, wait, what are we watching? Like, wait, what show? What network? What streamer was that on? Just
And not only that, all the bills are due at like different times. So
oh, she has a
sometimes it's
she has a
spreadsheet.
spreadsheet. She takes
Yeah.
care of the bills, so that's not my that's her domain. Um, you know, I fix stuff that she just pays for it.
You are the engineer. You are the what did you call yourself?
I'm a
You're
I don't know.
a mechanic,
Yeah, I'm
right?
a
I mean, an
mechanic. Yeah,
engineer.
yeah.
Well, you're not an
Well,
engineer, you said.
no, I'm
It's
not
because
an
I called
engineer.
you an engineer. I remember that.
No, engineers are annoying. And
We had many conversations
I
about
am
this.
not apologizing to my engineer friends. You know who you are, and you know why I don't like you. Um,
All love to engineers. We love engineers.
just I mean, work on a machine, and you'll be like, oh no, you don't like engineers because they clearly don't have. They build them. They
They
don't have
torture
to.
you with what you have
They
to do to fix it.
they build them. They don't care about what I have to do to fix them. That's for sure.
Exactly.
All right. So you obviously are very active on TikTok. I
Yeah.
finally broke down and downloaded TikTok.
I saw you in my show briefly
I
the other
did, and
day.
I was planning on spending much more
I
time
called
there.
you out.
Yeah, and I was gonna do something, but then I had to leave the room, so I had to
It's
put the
okay.
phone. I'm trying. I can't bring myself to use TikTok, and I know I need to because everybody tells me that that is a better way of promoting
Just take these
everything.
video clips and make a little snippet and promote your
Listen, it
podcast.
took me long enough to learn how to edit this thing, let alone figure out how to start editing video. Uh,
Okay, fair enough.
just let's learn one skill at a time. All right.
I'm 52 on TikTok, so what can I tell you?
Where so what do you do? You call yourself trivia chat on TikTok?
Yeah.
And
So I do a
then
nightly, by every other night. I was nightly, but I changed the schedule
okay.
recently.
What's
So for
what
tomorrow night, for example, we're doing Trivial Pursuit. So we'll play
okay.
trivia for last time it took an hour and 45 minutes. Hopefully it's a little quicker. Tonight we did classic rock, name that tune. So I played classic rock songs and the audience just guesses. People just love to compete and have fun. We chat with each other. It's really a social thing, like going to, remember we went to bar
Oh
trivia.
yeah,
So doing
bar
something like
trivia is
that.
great.
We
We
had a great time doing that in Atlanta.
oh yeah, the guys and I've done that at least once, if not once for sure. We maybe twice, but it's just it's so hard to get all three of us in the same room anymore because we don't live all right next to each other. So it is what it is, and I mean, life just gets in the way sometimes, and
It does.
but
That's why you have to grab it when you can, right?
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, that's not to say that the three of us don't have a good time, but it's just it's not as easy to get together and do do things.
Called getting older.
Yeah, having job responsibilities and
Irresponsible adulting.
yeah. And this is obviously also a really bad time of season to be trying to get together. And I mean, it's a good time to want to do it, but it's my calendar for the month is relatively full already, and I barely had a chance to go. Hey, wait, what? Like, you know,
Never mind the fact that you were in Atlanta for 2.5 weeks.
which is a fact that I still hear about. So, what feeds you, like creatively, spiritually, mentally? Because I know that you have, on top of having a lot of fun doing your trivia and your pop culture stuff, you have a what I would think a very mentally demanding job.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely is.
which is
It's a stressful job.
which yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that briefly
Yeah,
or
of
okay, yeah.
course.
So what is it? I mean, what do you do for a living, and then what feeds you?
Sure, absolutely. It's kind of one and the same in a way. So I've been an educator for a long time. I basically now I work as an education advocate, so I advocate for students with special needs. So basically, I work with the parents of students and the schools to help bridge the education gap. Most of my students are on special education or on an IEP, and I'm working to collaborate to be realistic, bring realistic expectations to both the parents and also the school. And, after the pandemic, there's been a real gap in kind of connecting, school and home. I mean, it existed beforehand, but it's more pronounced. And most of my work, honestly, is pro bono. I work with a lot of families of marginalized kids, so families that not necessarily have are struggling socioeconomically, don't have the support to pay for me. So I make my living through selling collectibles. I've sold collectibles on eBay. I've done odds and ends because what feeds me, to answer your question, is really advocating for kids that don't normally have an advocate. I grew up without that type of advocacy. My parents tried as much as they can, but they didn't understand. And so and I had really bad experiences in K to 12. So my goal is really to have other humans not have that bad experience. And so that's what feeds me is really driven by helping kids that normally wouldn't be able to get that help.
Okay, that's very admirable work, and we
Thanks, my friend.
definitely need more people doing stuff like that. So now to talk about some stuff that's a little less real. Bring
I
the show
love that
back up.
transition.
No,
Yeah.
there's no way
Happy,
to
happy.
there's no way to transition out of that. Normally, normally I try to find segues, but man, I got nothing for that.
No, it's fine.
So all right, if you and hey, I mean, that's okay. I mean, I mean, sometimes we try to get real on the show, and it's nice to know that like
That's
there are
there's a
people
real
that
person.
there's real things behind it. It's not just
Yeah.
wanting to have fun and do everything. There is more to life than just
TikTok.
what do you prefer, Marvel or DC?
Exactly. Well, Marvel, but that's another story. I love Marvel. I've always been a Marvel kid. Spider-Man was one of my favorite superheroes. Was that a, did you were asking me that
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
gonna answer it. Yeah. I love Marvel. Super Spider-Man, Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I still actually have my Marvel comic books, all of them, in a closet at home. I remember getting Todd McFarlane's first books of Amazing Spider-Man. I think it was like 298, and then he had that big 300. I still have that in mint condition. I saw recently what the values are, and I was like tempted, but I can't. I can't. I can't sell
Yeah.
them.
I don't have any of the books I had from when I was younger. So, but I have all the stuff that because I got back into it. Well, let's see, around the time, so like 2008, 2009, I got back into it for a few years. So I got a lot of the stuff I have is probably not worth anything. Maybe one day, like one of the issues will be because, like a random character got introduced that
Movie.
becomes massive in a movie or
Yeah.
something. But I don't know how much I'd want to sell any of it. Like it's all like it's stuff that I wanted. Like I didn't buy the comics to collect them to sell them. I bought them because I wanted to read them. Um,
Well, that was a very interesting, by the way, it was a very interesting period of Amazing Spider-Man because Deadpool's first issue was around that period of time too.
yes.
And it's just really, really valuable. I didn't know. I was just buying comic books. I used to
Yeah.
buy two copies, one to read and one to put away.
Well,
Like
and see
many,
that
many.
in the early mid '90s when that was happening, when Todd McFarlane was taking over and Jim Lee was doing what he was doing, what you had is you had a lot of people who were getting into comic books because they were, they're fun and they're cool, they are what they are. But you started to see the collector's market happen in the late
Mm,
'80s, early '90s,
yes,
where a lot of the stuff from the '50s and the '60s now all of a sudden was valuable. And it was valuable because Captain America was his own worst enemy.
yes,
Because Captain America in his comic books was like, hey, paper rationing. Like, so when
right,
you're done with a book, throw it, paper ration. And
right.
so those that survived, like my grandmother, decided that my father didn't need his comic books or his baseball cards anymore. And she threw them all out.
And they didn't put them in poly protectors with,
No,
the
no.
cardboard backing and,
So finding Detective Comics #1 is hard.
yes.
No,
Although I had a
so
copy in my hand, my wife's father, late father, once gave it showed me, and he's like, "Is this valuable?" I'm like, "Yeah."
right.
I couldn't believe I was holding it.
Which is why like the first Superman comics are so valuable even in terrible
lifting
condition.
the lifting the car or the
Yeah,
bus or whatever it
even if
was.
they're in
Yeah,
terrible condition because there's not many of them.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
however, when that bubble started to build in the late '80s, early '90s, Marvel and DC artificially inflated it by putting out instead of putting out like 1,000 run or a 2,000 run, but they'd put a 10,000 run or a 20,000 run. And we had a lot of people like yourself and other people not only buying one copy, two copies, buying three or four copies because they're like, oh, Spider-Man #1, which wasn't technically Spider-Man #1. It was, Spider-Man 400 or whatever it was. They just renumbered it. And so like my friend Craig, who used to own a comic book store, was like the Death of Superman would walk in his door every other week because some mom would find
Yes.
a polybag version, and he's like, it doesn't. It's barely worth what it was sold
And they
at
made it
then.
into a graphic novel too,
Yeah,
so it was like even
but it
multiplied
was
even more.
it's barely worth what it's printed on because he
Yes.
he can he can find it easily. Like it's not hard to find. So what happens is we have to find the ones that like introduce a character or didn't have the
Hmm.
print run that a lot of these other ones had, that become more valuable, or you start getting into the independence of like Kick Ass or stuff that had lower print runs.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there that doesn't take away from the fact that like Astonishing X-Men #1, the Chris Claremont in the
Oh
90s,
yeah, Chris Cron. Oh man, yeah.
is not super valuable, and there's just but the
But still
market was
valuable to us, right? We
right. Yeah,
still
I mean,
enjoy
but
them.
that's why
Yeah,
like most of the books I have are valuable to me because I
exactly.
wanted them. They're not
You remember
valuable.
the moment when you were
Yeah,
reading it as a kid? I know I do.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's why like I think that's probably why Batman is my favorite character, because he's the one that I read the
I love
most
Batman too.
when I was a kid. But I prefer Marvel as well. But I just like Batman is still like he is my #1 because like that was my comic that I read, and I'm sure it had something to do with the Adam West TV show, and
Oh, I
then
love the Adam West
and
TV
then
show. Yeah.
definitely the Michael Keaton movie. I mean, that
Oh
was
yeah.
that
He
was one
was
of
the Batman, the first movie.
yeah,
Absolutely.
which is why it was so sad seeing that Flash movie.
I didn't see it.
Oh, it's so bad. It's
That's what
just
I've heard. But
Michael Keaton was great, and it was so awesome seeing him put the cowl back on. But the rest of the movie was just such hot garbage.
yeah, that's what I've heard. Isn't it kind of a ripoff? I don't know the plot so totally. Is it a ripoff on the Spider-Man idea where there are multiple universes, or is that what that
No,
is?
I
Or,
mean
oh, it's time travel.
it is time travel. It is. I mean,
Uh,
it's however many years ago, the Flash DC did a series called the Flashpoint Paradox,
yes.
where the Flash decides he can run fast enough to go back in time and save his mother from being
And I saw
murdered.
that on a TV version
Yes,
of The Flash. Grant, yeah,
Grant Gustin,
which I love.
the TV version did it so much better a couple
So
of years
good.
ago. And then they were
Yeah.
like, well, let's try to redo it with this, monster.
Grant Gustin was a great Flash. I don't know why they
Yes,
didn't put him in the movie, but
they
okay.
should have, but so there's this storyline, and it's not, I mean, Marvel and DC steal from each other all the time. Spider-Man has the Spider-Verse and Flash has this, and I mean, DC has always had the Elseworlds and Marvel's
Hmm.
always had the multiverse. I couldn't honestly tell you who came up with what first. I'm sure there's some, screaming basement
Someone will
dwelling.
claim it.
So, well, there's some screaming basement dwelling nerd right now yelling at me saying, but
They're yelling at their phone listening to this podcast, going, "He doesn't know."
well,
They'll
you know
send you a
what then?
message. Send.
Send me a message and be the first one to actually comment on the podcast.
Absolutely.
The Flashpoint Paradox existed. They did the story on Flash, which honestly, they took the entire season, maybe even multiple seasons, to tell the story, where they tried to jam the entire story into like an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, like just over. I think it was like a two and a
And
half
that was
hour
a
movie
full
actually.
season of The Flash, if I
Right,
remember
that was a full,
correctly.
and every episode was an
Yeah.
hour, so you're like looking at like 20 something episodes. So you got like 20
And they
and
took the full season. Like it
right,
needed the full season.
and the run itself was like a multiple year run. It
It
wasn't
was. It did
it
go over.
it wasn't like just a 4 issue run or anything. Like it was, so it was just it was a bad retelling of the story, which we had already seen better on
I'm,
TV.
I'm even happier I didn't see it.
And then it got delayed like a year or so from when it was supposed to originally come out to when they finally released it. And somehow the graphics still looked like hot shit. Like it was like a steaming pile of garbage on screen. It was like, how do you spend that
Do
much
you not
money?
respect the fans, right?
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
mean, just it was more like they were like, we're gonna have all these so cool cameos. We're gonna have Michael Keaton come back. We're gonna do all these Superman. And I'm gonna. Do you mind if I ruin some stuff for you? Because at this point, it's
Oh
been like
no, I don't.
okay.
I don't
So
mind at all. Go for it.
the end of the movie, Flash has
But
like
spoiler
he.
alert for everybody else.
Oh, listen, you've been listening to this show. You know that spoilers happen. That's just
Yeah,
and quite honestly,
absolutely.
it's been on Max long enough that it's your fault you haven't watched it.
I love
Um,
that.
So at the end of the story, he keeps running back in time, trying to change one little thing to finally get it right and finally get it right. And he ends up creating, like these infinite numbers of timeline. And like Superman doesn't exist in the world where Michael Keaton's Batman is. It's Supergirl.
Oh,
So it's Sasha Calle as Supergirl. But
how confusing.
because Superman never landed, his rocket got hit by an asteroid or went off. It
Oh,
just
so the
it
baby died,
yeah,
or
or it just never showed up or went to another planet. Who knows? They never go into deep. And but Kara Danvers, Kara, she did. And so she ends up like the Russians had her. So they kind of even tried to do like the Red Sun storyline of Superman by having her. And it was, anyway, they do a bunch of
sounds like a
Batman.
hot mess.
Yeah, they do a bunch of Batman and Superman cameos. So like they had George Reeves, they had Christopher Reeve, they
Did they
had
bring them back from the dead?
Adam. Yes, they brought him back from the dead. The Adam West, they had a lot of them.
Now I want to see it because it's a hot mess.
They had Nick Cage as Superman
Really?
because he was supposed to be Nick Cage in that one movie that never happened.
Oh my God.
Um, so
That's
the last couple minutes were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they did it.
It sounds like it could be a good idea.
It was also kind of like terrifying at the same time because like that like Christopher Reeve and George Reeves and Adam West like never actually signed off on it. It was maybe their families or
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, and they were digital, like they weren't like they just didn't take like clips from the TV
So
show.
they had the actor and they put their face over the actor with the voice.
Yeah, and most of it wasn't like Reeve even voice. It was just like an image. Yeah, and
That is so weird.
I finally saw
Just
that Nick
sounds
Cage
weird.
actually did because originally it was being reported that Nick Cage never actually came in. They just got him to sign off on it. But he finally did come in and say, "Oh yeah, he did go into the studio and film, a couple hours worth
Wow.
of stuff so that they could." But he said that they never told him what they were actually doing.
Hmm.
Like they told him one thing and then they did something else. So he's come out and said that he's not necessarily for it because like they kind of lied to him about what they were doing. And they had a bunch of other, but they missed a bunch. And then the very end, George Clooney showed up at like because they had Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton, so they had two of the Batmans. And then at the very end, Michael Keaton Batman goes away because you're now in a different universe. Like
So the Val Kilmer Batman doesn't exist.
no, the Val Kilmer one they don't acknowledge, but all the
I mean,
other
he can't. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean he can't do much. I
Right.
mean and but they still it was such a bizarre hot mess of a movie, and the really cool cameos or the Michael Keaton just could not save that tragic mess of a movie.
Yeah.
But
How did it do in the box office?
not well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a bomb. And it did okay because I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, Michael Keaton," and then word of mouth got out that like it wasn't.
Mm,
Yeah.
not good.
So given
Not
all of
good.
that, who in history would you wedgie if you could wedgie anybody?
I love that. That question is so awesome. I will say, if I had a wedgie anybody annoying, and I know it can't be Hitler, because that would be the number one, of course. Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, come on. Come on. Can anybody be just annoyingly annoying?
I I haven't
Has
I
anyone ever said Napoleon?
no, you're the first. And
Hey, yo,
uh
there you go, Napoleon.
I mean that would be humorous. I mean it'd be interesting. I mean
Right. I'm all about the comedy.
yeah, there. I do want to go see that movie though. I have not had a chance to go see it
I
yet,
have
but
not either. But
so
Napoleon would be fun, and there would be a reason for it.
oh yeah, why not? Just I mean,
He wasn't a nice guy.
yeah, I mean no, I mean Nick said Jerry Jones, so hey, whatever.
I heard that. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, if anybody deserves it, it's him. I mean, why not Napoleon? It's your question to answer how you want to answer it.
Or I would also wedgie any owner of the New York Mets between 1986 and recently before Steve Cohen. So there you
Oh,
go.
well, okay. Well, there you go. I mean,
I can
yeah.
wedgie a lot of people.
Yeah. All right. And on that, in a similar vein, hey, that's a microphone. Don't do that.
Poor cat.
Ozzy,
Cat wants to eat the
jeez.
microphone.
She's jealous, apparently. She's a
She
big
wants to be
fan.
on the podcast.
She's a big fan of Napoleon. She doesn't want you wedging her, apparently.
Oh, see.
All right. If you could live in any fictional world, any fictional world, I mean, whatever,
Where
what,
would I live?
yeah, where would you live? Where would
I
you
would
want to
live with
go?
the Oompa Loompas and Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Hey, all right. Yeah, can't go
I mean, come
wrong
on,
there.
chocolate fountains.
Oh yeah.
I would absolutely live with those Oompa Loompas.
That would it does seem like a fun work environment.
Although poor
Or
Augustus Gloop got stuck in the tube, so
well, I mean,
And look, my TV got zapped.
that is true, and wonder
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway.
Anyway, moving on. Not just
Moving,
chocolate.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, that's actually a good one. I hadn't thought about that one.
We could talk more about that after March.
Yeah. All right. So where can we find you? What are your plug your stuff. Tell me where we
Sure.
can find you. Where you want people to hunt you down.
Well, some people, no. On TikTok, I'm Trivia Chat. Instagram, Trivia Chat. X, I think it's called now, Trivia Chat. Most platforms, Trivia Chat, or Facebook, Tim Sternberg. I'm not Trivia Chat on
Okay.
Facebook.
And that is it's one word trivia chat.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well then,
Easy enough, right?
oh yeah, easy enough. All right. So, if you if you want to play some trivia, have a good time, I recommend if you can actually do TikTok and get yourself behind that, then recommend going for it. The couple minutes I was there, it did seem fun, but
I'm going to start on Instagram too soon. So
okay. All right.
there you go.
Um, so if you know that as a grown adult that you have a podcast you need to promote and you just can't bring yourself to promote it on one of the bigger areas that you should be promoting it on, just remember that stupid never walks alone.
Comic books have been around for almost a century, and in the last 2 decades, we've finally gotten to see many of these characters brought to life in movies and on TV. On the Moving Panels podcast, we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. Join me and my guests as we discuss both the good and the bad from Marvel, DC, and even some of the lesser-known comic book companies. Learn what is and isn't from the comics, as well as our nerdy review of the movie or show. New episodes drop every Monday, and you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. So join us for Moving Panels, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.